I am an artist living in beautiful Vermont, USA, and I have a lot of questions. So I engage the minds of the people that I meet. Poets, writers, artists. I explore what's inside and share it with you. My name is Ricky McGeckran, and I am eager to know. I'm here with Josh Farr from Vermont Center for Photography, VCP in Brattleboro. Josh is a curator, photographer, and nonprofit director. Thank you very much for making the trip down from Brattleboro here to Bellows Falls to join me on Eager to Know.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we met when I stumbled into Vermont Center for Photography,
Yes.
VCP, right in downtown Brattleboro,
Yeah.
and I was stunned and impressed at how nice the space was. It is beautiful. The exhibits that you had and the programs that you offer. Tell people about VCP.
Oh, what to say? Well, VCP, Vermont Center for Photography, is a 25-year-old nonprofit organization that's been in downtown Brattleboro, and we do all things photographic, whether it's our exhibition schedule that we do, monthly exhibitions. We have public studio spaces for darkroom and digital lab rental that folks can come and create work. We have an offering of classes and workshops and private tutorials that we can teach to learn photography. And we even have a small thrift store of donated photographic equipment, mostly vintage, older equipment that folks can purchase as a fundraiser for the center. So that mixed in with a sprinkling of monthly events and portfolio reviews and artist talks and whatever else we can conjure up keeps us pretty busy, just supporting all things photographic for sort of a regional, vastly, most of New England community of photographers, both digital and film-based photographers.
Yeah, and film.
Yeah.
It's very, I always feel very comfortable when I'm there. It's very welcoming, and it has a beautiful energy. Anytime I make a trip to Brattleboro, for whatever reason, I always pop in, chat with you. Love to go to the thrift store to see all of the camera equipment. It's not just it's cameras, it's lenses, but it's also development equipment. And so it's very interesting. You seem to have everything in there.
Yeah, it's really anything photographic or photographically related: cameras, lenses, lighting equipment, old darkroom equipment, film developing equipment, books, bags, paper, frames, anything that would be beneficial to photographers or photography-relaed artists of any kind. And it's amazing what folks are willing and able to donate. And obviously, as a nonprofit, we can provide them with tax-deductible donation receipts, and then all of those proceeds that come from the store go into supporting the programs and exhibitions and classes and other events that VCP is able to do. And it's become an enormous percentage of VCP's total annual revenue. So we are tremendously appreciative for all the donations and purchases, both in person and online, and has been just a huge resurgence in recent years, with especially younger folks wanting to shoot older film-based cameras, 35 millimeter and medium format, and even large format cameras, and just have that tactile experience of processing and developing black and white and some color film, whether at VCP in our studios or in their own sort of makeshift home labs and whatnot. So it's been really awesome to see young people really wanting to push back a little bit on the convenience of digital and the immediacy of digital, and get something a little bit more process oriented and hands-on.
Yeah. So I want to talk more. I certainly want to talk with you more about film photography and more about VCP offerings.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk about you,
Okay.
and I want to talk about how photography showed up in your life. Like, how did you get turned onto it? I know you went to school for photography, so tell me about how that happened.
Well, I suppose from a quite young age, I was often the member of my family, my parents, my sister and I, that would have a little Kodak Instamatic or disposable camera even, or just a little point and shoot camera on any little excursion that we would be venturing out on, and was always obsessed with the binders and Tupperware containers full of little 4x6 snapshots of family photos from decades even before I was around.
So obsessed meaning you
obsessed
would
with the historical, just looking at them and
so you would just spend a lot
them.
of time with
yeah
them.
yeah and just sort of the chronological timeline of not only our family but our community and our friends and our extended family and places that we'd been, which was largely around Maine.
All right, you grew up in Western Maine.
Yep, Oxford Hills, Maine. And then by the time I got to high school, our high school offered a number of tech classes and had a dark room, and it was still very, very early digital photography at that time, so digital was not as available. And I took a number of those classes, and I even created my own independent high school not work study, but a independent study class.
Around the developing,
around
the whole process.
Yeah, around just shooting black and white film, and developing the film in the darkroom and making black and white prints, and just I guess I've been inclined to be a very hands-on, tactile person in general. So to have something that's both creative and mechanical and hands-on in that sense was kind of a nice medley of technologies for my mind. But and then being something I was so passionate about in high school, it was the natural thing that I started looking at art schools around the Northeast when it was time to march onward to undergrad, and ended up at the New Hampshire Institute of Art, which is in Manchester, New Hampshire, which was a 4-year BFA program, which I loved, and it was a small, very intimate setting and got a lot of hands-on, one-on-one attention. And
were you studying more than just photography? Like, were you studying painting and drawing and everything in the art world, or was it mostly photography?
I mean, it's a Bachelor of Fine Arts. There's you can sort of have a major, but everyone's sort of required to dabble in a number of different things. They have what they call materials and processes class, which just exposes you to a little bit of everything: ceramics, printmaking, painting, drawing, illustration, both hand illustration as well as digital illustration, just as a sampler platter of sorts to get you exposed to some things you may not otherwise think to try. And there were many other things that if I had more time in undergrad, I would have loved to dive a little deeper into, like printmaking, intaglio, etching, running through a print press, and screen printing and monoprinting and all those types of things really spoke to me as well, but only had so much time. So
hold on, I want to go back to I'm thinking of you as a youngster going through a box of pictures and being excited and interested and immersed in that. That is a very different part of you than the part of you that is interested in the chemistry of developing film. Like it's and that's what's so interesting about film is it's a very broad, there's a lot. It's very broad. It's a wide range of stuff. It's creativity. It's connecting with the world, connecting with history, but also there's like this chemistry, and it's very interesting.
It's I think both the process of reviewing old photographs as well as the creation of or using of these sort of vintage technologies, if I can call them that, is a very nostalgic thing, and I guess I've always been a pretty nostalgic person, and also sort of fascinated by the idea, personally, just of looking at photographs of, as a young child or even a toddler, of a version of yourself that you have no memory of, and a portion of your life that you lived that you typically have no sort of present memory of. So that's sort of just a fascinating part of that dynamic for me. And I think perhaps out of that came the interest in present time to photograph and capture and document a lot of these experiences in my life as sort of a visual journal or visual diary of these experiences, so that they can be not only remembered by yourself 10, 20, 40, 50 years from now, but possibly even, future generations. And nobody wants to be forgotten into the books of history. But
well, I don't think that we have to worry about that now with cameras on phones and photographs and
Right.
video of everything. Do you have an opinion on that? Like how I know my dad had a camera in the 50s. I think we may have spoken about this, and he has all these photographs that he took, and I have the camera. It's completely manual, and he took slides, and it was such a I'm realizing how much skill it took for him to take these beautiful photographs, and they were so valuable to us growing up because there was only 400 of them.
Right.
And I fast forward, that's a lot, but that's all we had. Now we have photographs of everything. And so what do you think about that? Is that good? Is that bad? Is it both?
It's interesting. I don't know if I'm equipped or prepared to say good or bad, but I think it definitely changes how we photograph and what we photograph. Certainly dating back into the dawn of photography in the early or mid to late 1800s, you had to be a full-blown scientist. You had to know how to mix all the raw ingredients and to make the chemicals, to process the film, to do everything. And obviously over the decades, if not centuries, it has become increasingly more accessible to a wider audience. You don't have to be a specialist anymore. I've got not only one but 3 cameras on my iPhone. And but I think that the thing that comes up a lot for me is the obsolescence of the media over even relatively short period of time. I mean, we look at the color slides and the negatives, and like for video, like VHS tapes and even CDs are now becoming out of date. How easy is it, or accessible is it going to be 50 years from now, 75 years from now, when someone finds an SD card sitting in their grandfather's bedroom dresser drawer, and they're like, "Oh, hon, come look at this. Remember these? I don't think we even have anything that can read those anymore." So,
and then they'll be the youngster. What's that?
Well, and how many people take photos on their phone and never print them, never share them outside of Instagram or Facebook or whatever platform of their choices? And what that means for those photographs, and where will they exist into the future, and will they be something that is able to carry over across generations, or will they get lost in the ether of the cloud, whatever that means? But I think it certainly changes your eye and how you photograph, because when you have a roll of 36 exposure 35 millimeter film, you're working under the knowledge that you only have 36 photographs. And it's, you can get another roll of film, but it costs money. I can take 5,000 photographs in an afternoon with my iPhone.
Yeah.
But it may only be 1 out of every 100 that end up becoming real meaningful photographs that I hang on to any great degree in my future. Whereas if you're photographing on 36 frames on a roll of film, you may be a little bit more mindful or thoughtful or present in each photograph that you choose to take very more decisively. So maybe that's just a ratio of efficiency, but I think I appreciate that film forces you to slow down and be a bit more mindful about what you're photographing. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about developing film. I know that the whole world of film developing. I know that Vermont Center for Photography offers, they have dark rooms.
Yeah.
You can get a membership.
Yeah.
So I believe you have unlimited access or somewhat to the dark rooms. And so anybody can do that. Would somebody need a background or skill to do that?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's not a lot of machinery in the studio spaces that you would break or screw up or cause some kind of issue with. You would either just come out with great images or not many images. So we are available to do some private tutorials to teach people, or just even sort of loosely refresh them. There's a lot of people that come in that have used darkrooms in decades past or years past, but it may have been 10 years and they just need a little refresh to get themselves going again. But a lot of it's pretty, as far as the physical steps of developing a roll of black and white film, it's largely mechanical in the developing process. And so it's really just following a sequence of steps and
Right.
pouring the chemicals into the tank in the right order and for the right amount of time at the right temperature, and popping it out. It's really in the darkroom printing process that starts to allow for a bit more creative interpretation
Right.
of those negatives. But
And just so people, because there could be some people that are listening or watching this that may not know, with film photography, you have the photosensitive film that goes in the camera. That's what you
Right.
develop, and you end up with a negative. And in order to get a print, you actually have to basically take a photo of the negative. You shine light through it,
Right.
and you take a photo of it with photosensitive paper.
Right, and then that enlarger projects the light down from a light bulb through the negative, out at a lens, onto light sensitized paper, all in the dark.
And you can do all sorts of things at that point with adjustments in that during that phase.
And you can just do a very straight print that's just exposing light for 10, 15, 20 seconds or something, and just letting the negative be as it is. But then there's all these filters that you can control that adjust the contrast of your image. If it's sort of a low contrast image, you can increase that, or if it's too contrasty, you can decrease it. And then you can even selectively dodge and burn and remove light from certain areas with little pieces of cardboard, or with your hands by casting shadows between the projected light and the paper to remove light from certain localized areas, or to add light in a specific area. It can turn
it's very
into
physical.
quite a choreography. It is
Yeah.
literally like when you get into some more complicated printing processes or techniques, it literally feels like a little choreographed dance that you have to do. And there's even a little metronome on the digital timer that runs the enlarger that you can count out the seconds and move accordingly, and you're dancing and moving, dodging and burning and doing all the things. And it definitely takes a certain presence and stress-free mind state, and you can't be you gotta be in a light, accepting mood and not be in any kind of hurry, for sure. Because
So this sounds like a wonderful hobby for someone. And it sounds like it would be really good for people to do film photography and developing.
Yeah, I mean, and just to mention that there are certainly a number of hobby photographers that do, a large portion of them that do this purely for the creative joy and experience of photographing. And to a large degree, there are still a number of commercial or photographers who shoot film for a living. There's more and more wedding photographers showing up nowadays with a medium format, Hasselblad or a Mamiya around their neck with a digital camera on their other shoulder or something like that, because people are, I think customers and newlyweds are increasingly appreciating the aesthetic quality of film-based photograph and want that as part of their experience, or even just for portraits or a variety of other fields of work. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a large swath of hobby-based photographers. But
And I do know, you had mentioned this, but I know that younger people, I have some friends that are in their 20s, and they're all getting their 35 millimeter cameras.
what goes around comes around. I mean, it all comes
like
back
vinyl.
around. It is. No, and
Do you think do you think print magazines are going to come back? Because that's the one thing I'm wondering about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience in that field, but it seems like there'll always be a place for those. But I think, and this is all sort of a theory, but I think like many or most art movements or social movements happen, it's usually in some sort of direct pushback or response to or just exhaustion with a previous mode of operating. And I think the increased immediacy and accessibility and just convenience of everyone having a phone in their pocket or a high quality, affordable digital camera at their disposal, it does make things more convenient, but it also takes away some of the magic or the personalized experience of the art of photography, and when somebody like Katy Perry or someone walks out on stage with a little film camera or something, and she's seen publicly on TV with it, the demand and value of that particular camera goes through the roof the following weeks. So the influencer modality of social dynamics these days definitely, I think, has an effect in that it can create pretty instantaneous tsunamis of interest if a particular individual or group of individuals is seen using a beautiful old film camera, or even a movie that comes out, like when Johnny Depp did the Minamata, W. Gene Smith remake film that just came out a year or two ago, and he's using this old 35mm Minolta, and then Minoltas were all the thing for a year or two or something like that. So, but we find, and we post a number of the items that we have in our thrift store for sale online, and we ship stuff out nationally and even some internationally, that when you start to get a feeling for that national, I guess you could still call it niche, but broad national interest and community of photographers wanting to shoot film, you realize it's everywhere. Everybody wants a piece of the film pie. But
well, this sounds like a very large new world for someone to explore.
Re-explore.
Yeah, re-explore.
Yeah.
And I think that for people that live in this area, your VCP, because you have the store where you can buy all the equipment, and you have the development.
Shop.
It's a one-stop shop. So if someone was interested in doing film photography and wanted to go to VCP, they obviously would need a camera and the film. Would they have to bring their own paper, or can they buy paper there? Or what would they have to bring with them? So
for use of either the digital lab or the darkroom, if you wanted to shoot film, we do have film for sale, 35mm and medium format film for sale in the shop. And we get a pretty large amount of donated, expired darkroom paper that folks bring us, that we make available essentially for free in the darkroom if people don't have their own paper immediately. We don't have a supply of it available for purchase otherwise, but generally speaking, for both spaces, people just bring their own paper. So like in the digital lab, there's computers and scanners and large format digital photographic printers. It includes, the rental rates include use of the computers and scanners and the ink for the printer, and then people just bring their own paper. We do have some digital paper available for purchase. And then for the darkroom, if you've already arriving with a roll of film that you've shot and you're ready to develop, then we have all the chemistry in the darkroom that is included, and we can be available to help answer questions and get people through the process. But generally speaking, people bring their own paper, and that's pretty much the only thing that we don't by default provide in-house. But yeah.
Now, I know one of the things that you have are these meetup groups, I think they're called. I know I participated where it was, I think, a once a month thing, and I submitted some photographs, and then I showed up and everyone presented their photographs, and it was really, really fun. And we had people with all kinds of interesting backgrounds. Tell me about that.
So, yeah, I think what a lot of people are looking for in a photographic community is literally just that, just the community of people to get together and to show work, to bounce ideas off of. And I know for myself, when I was an undergrad and then I left, the thing that I missed the most was that like 24/7 bubble of photographers all around you that you could, when you're printing in the darkroom, you could bring stuff out and be like, oh, I'm having an issue with this. Do you have any ideas? Or like, I'm working through this project. I'm kind of stuck and I don't know where to go with this. What do I do? So for quite a few years now, at least 15 years, we've been running these once a month groups called Open Portfolio Night. And it's the last Sunday of every month right at VCP from 5 to 7. And it's open to anyone of any experience level or type of photography. And we encourage people to bring physical prints, small prints, that you can lay out. We have a wall that you can magnet them up on. And it's just a way to bring work, share, get some feedback from a group of usually anywhere from 6 to 20 people, usually at least a dozen. And we just sort of go around. It's sort of like a show and tell. We go around and each person gets, depending on how many people are there, anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes per person, and just put some work up, and people ask questions and you ask questions depending on what you're sort of hoping to gain from that. And some people certainly just come to see what other people are doing, and it's just a great way to meet folks in a very approachable, friendly, supportive environment. We don't aim to make anybody leave in tears or anything like that, existentially rethinking their career path, but just trying to sort of help everyone achieve whatever the next step of their creative journey is. But and that's been a really great outlet for many local photographers.
Yeah, so. And I certainly enjoyed when I participated.
Oh, good.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for...
My pleasure.
Coming up from Bellows Falls, from Brattleboro all the way here to Bellows Falls.
It's a long journey.
It was a long journey.
It's a long journey.
And if people are interested, Vermont Center for Photography, and I'll put the URL in the show description.
That'd be
but
wonderful.
Thank you very much for hanging out with me. This was great.
You're quite welcome, and thank you for having me.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.